A Scattered Mind meets Zettelkasten, Opening Pandora's Slipbox. Why the crazy title? Well, first off, I'm trying to avoid clickbaity titles because how to do the Zettelkasten feels like it's a bit disingenuous because, in all honesty, I really don't know. I'm not a note-taking guru. I'm just a guy trying to figure this out in a public forum and having fun doing it. Why Opening Pandora's Slipbox though? So there's a lot of debate about whether the Zettelkasten is really an effective system, and this is particularly in the context of academic research, and I think the debate is warranted. It's a very intensive system, and it definitely can yield positive results, but it takes a lot of work. And there's just so much information out there that trying to distill it down to its core parts is really difficult. So this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to break concepts down to the simplest parts and then implement it myself and hopefully allow other people to learn from my mistakes, from my meanderings through internet land. So I hope you enjoy the video and that you learn something, and yeah, let's get into it. So there are lots of different videos and approaches. Zettelkastens everywhere. So many different versions, which one to choose. So what are my intentions with this video? Why would I want to start talking about Zettelkasten at all? Personally, I started from a point of confusion and somewhat overwhelmed. I looked at too many videos, I read the book, How to Take Smart Notes, and I was really attracted to the concepts that I found in that book. It sounded like a very effective way of working that would match my sort of stuttering approach or scattered mind as I've written there. It really resonated with me. I think that I've gotten to a half-baked solution that should work, and I want to continue to evolve it with things that resonate. And I hope that this will resonate for some people as well who may have had trouble setting up a Zettelkasten or might just get ideas. I think sharing this sort of thing, if it helps another person with some ideas, that is a great achievement. Potato. It comes from a song. I say potato, you say potato. What does it mean? It means my terminology is probably imperfect. It's an amalgamation of approaches. So if I haven't done justice to Sonke Arendts in his book, How to Take Smart Notes, or the original Zettelkasten definitions, please forgive me. So what is a Zettelkasten? It's often referred to as this long-term conversation partner, and we're going to look at that a little bit later, the person who coined that. And what that means is it is a storage system for your thoughts and ideas in form of index cards. And it's a processing system to add value to your thoughts and ideas, also using index cards and putting them into a physical location and being able to reference those ideas very easily using a location system. So that's a very quick definition for it. Like, it just means that I can bring out ideas and sort of engage with this one topic there and then engage with another topic there, all by using a cleverly referenced system. I also want to say that it's a tool that requires you to put in the effort in order to get the reward. It takes a lot of work. It really requires like the knowledge work side of things, chewing, thinking, writing. What is a Zettelkasten not? It's not a collection of things that you've read, which is the collector's fallacy, in the sense that I'm just storing tidbits of information that I've found into like some sort of archive system. It's not easy. It takes a lot of work, as I said, and it's definitely not a silver bullet. I think we live in a generation that looks for silver bullets. I definitely do. Something that will solve all my problems from note-taking and writing. There's no panacea, note-taking panacea of Zettelkasten or whatever anyone may sell you. It all takes hard work. Looking at the question, do I even need a Zettelkasten? Starting to get into the meaty sort of subjects now. And for me, it's all about how you want to work. A really helpful analogy that I've come across compares traditional writing and Zettelkasten writing with a just-in-time and just-in-case management approach. Shout out to Guy Etlin, whose video is linked below. A just-in-time management system looks at inventory and aligns raw material orders directly with production. It's all about being lean, being efficient, and doing only what is necessary in order to meet the demands. The just-in-case inventory management strategy produces a reserve of finished products that allows the company to respond flexibly to different demands. Now, what does this look like from a comparison of the two different approaches? So, just-in-time, from a timing perspective, it's very deadline driven. It's like, you have very specific objectives. And, moving this analogy into writing, the topic is often very much predefined. You have a very narrow scope and you know exactly what you need to do. The writing process is therefore quite directed. You find your raw materials and you write. It doesn't leave much space for creativity or divergence, and the outcome is therefore linear and predictable. And this is therefore more suitable for essays, short topics, arguably so. I mean, this is where it comes down to personal preference. In the Zettelkasten, the timing is best facilitated by no clear deadline. If you have a clear deadline, you will be producing lots of notes and it will feel that you're not actually moving towards your goal. And the topic emerges from the bottom up as opposed to being predefined. You decide on the topic on the basis of what concentrations of topics or subjects you find emerging from your Zettelkasten. As a result of this, your writing process tends to flow more than be directed as it emerges from this bottom-up process. And the outcome is very non-linear. And some would argue that non-linear outcome is where true knowledge is built. Where is it more suitable for? This is the topic for debate. There's lots of questions if this is really suitable to academic writing, and it very well might be, but it really depends on your approach, how much energy you're willing to put into the system, and if you are able to get a system that works for you. So looking at an example of this, say now I have 3 topics and I have 4 sources in each topic. If I look at these topics or these sources, they will be the raw materials that I'm trying to process. So the just-in-time approach, or the traditional writing approach, will look at only one topic that is relevant to the outcome that is required. So this is now just using an example, and the outcome is very much direct. It's your essay with a great introduction, body paragraph 1, 2, 3, and an impressive conclusion. The finished piece or the product is very predictable. The Zettelkasten approach samples across these different topics more broadly and produces atomic notes of interest from each of these different sources. We'll get a little bit more into what an atomic note means a little bit later. And it's also non-linear. So, I can do all these 3 different things at once and produce these different atomic notes, and there's no sequence. So there's multiple products, but there's no clear, answer from this. But what happens is when you start to link these topics together, your answers or your writing starts to emerge from the combinations of these atomic notes. Jumping back to Logseq, I now want to have a brief look at the hero and his system. And this was popularized in the book, How to Take Smart Notes, that I think a lot of people have come across if you are familiar with this topic. So our hero is a man by the name of Niklas Luhmann. And this is this fine-looking German fellow over here. So he was a prolific 20th century German sociologist who published more than 70 books and 400 scholarly articles. He covered a wide range of topics from law and politics to love and art. Now, I am not an academic by any stretch of the imagination, but from what I know, 70 books and 400 scholarly articles is a ton of work. So that is really impressive. What really gripped me about Luhmann and his system is he said this: I only do what is easy. I only write when I immediately know how to do it. If I falter for a moment, I put the matter aside and do something else. And that really resonates strongly with how I operate. So I thought it must definitely be something worth looking into. Now, Niklas Luhmann was so prolific that there's actually an online archive dedicated to his work and his Zettelkasten. And if you go to niklasluhmannarchive.de, you'll see all of this here. And I've got the Google translated version here, which provides some very interesting translations. But the coolest thing that I want to get into about Niklas Luhmann's system is this branched view of all his notes. So he had a very defined schema for how he went about his notes, where each note had an address in his slipbox, so in his Zettelkasten. And that was defined by a sequence of numbers and letters. And I'm going to get into how he did that just now, but the way that he worked was he had multiple different entry points. So you can see all of these notes here on the side are these entry points for his conversations. And those which are a little bit longer here have been developed more over time. So you can see it indicates where his major interests were. His system wasn't digital, but This is thanks to the folks who are doing the archive, that we have this brilliant resource so that we can see how these different notes evolved over time and branched and were sequenced. And that's something really important that I want to get into. The way that Niklas Luhmann started his notes was by giving them a number. And say now he wanted to start 4 different nursery rhymes. So note 1 would be The Three Little Pigs. Note 2 would be Jack and the Beanstalk. Note 3 would be Rapunzel, and note 4 would be The Ugly Duckling. So pretty simple, nothing special here. He just started these different disparate notes. But now, if we wanted to actually write out the story of The Three Little Pigs, we'd have to create a branch from this system. I'm sorry for the sacrilegious example of using fairy tales. It probably doesn't do the system justice, but hopefully just will visualize how these different branches and links work. So if he wanted to drill into a topic or get into something, he would sequence a letter on top of that number. And he would alternate this going forward. So I'm just going to use the example now. He would start the story with 1A. Once upon a time, there was an old sow with 3 little pigs. And she couldn't keep them because she didn't have enough money, so she sent them out to seek their fortune. 1B would be the continuation of that thread. So the 3 little pigs decided to build a house, and that was great. But when they were walking to the brickworks, they came across a man carrying a bundle of straw. Continuation of that is 1C. So the first little pig said to himself, I don't want to walk to the brickworks, it's too far. Man, give me the straw and I'm going to build a house. Now this is where it gets interesting, because we know in the story that the first little pig goes off and builds his house and gets blown down and gets eaten by the wolf, but that's actually more of a drill down into that 1C. The story actually continues where the 2 little pigs continue on their way to the brickworks, and then they pass a man with a bundle of sticks, and then the second little pig says to himself, I don't want to build a house with bricks. Building a house with sticks is okay. Man, give me those sticks and let me build a house. And what has happened in the background is we actually drilled down into this 1C element here. So when we want to branch off of that 1C, we then alternate with a number. So 1C1 is the man gave him the straw and the pig built his house and he settled down for a rest. Continuation, again, we increment the number. So 1C2, a wolf came along. Little pig, let me in. Incrementing the number again. The little pig answered no, and then the wolf wanted to blow his house down. So it really was a brilliant system of incrementing the number to indicate sequencing and appending either a letter or a number, which would alternate depending on what had come previously, to indicate branching or, drilling down into a topic or expanding upon a topic. And now the important question. If I try and distill all that I've just chatted about, what am I trying to achieve? And this is really like the building blocks of the system for me. So I want to build a linked network of nodes, but not just a linked network, a logically linked network. So there must be clear relationships between nodes. I also want to have a simple system for processing nodes or for developing nodes. Looking big picture, I want to have a scalable framework that will age well. I mean, if we look at Luhmann's framework, it was crazy. He had 90,000 nodes in there and he was able to work very organically with this. And this one really is the kicker for me. So a process that allows for organic development, as always, and multiple entry points that I can pivot my attention to when I feel like it. So that was, the original thing that really drew me from Niklas Luhmann, the ability to devote attention where you feel you have the energy for it. So ability to surface my notes with some serendipity, and that's with using simple search and navigation, and this I'll look at in a future video. What this all translates to in summary is this idea of a good conversation partner, a place that I can go to, or a person that I can go to when I want to talk about any topic, and I can just find that topic and develop that and chew a little bit on it and add somewhere later, link it together, really have this nice organic webbed framework of thoughts. Okay, so what are the design principles that follow as a result? And some of these will be familiar to you. So atomicity of notes. So the notes can stand alone. That is what it means by atomic. Like it is the single fundamental building block that is bottom up rather than top down. That's what provides us this multiple entry points into the conversation, because each note is standalone. I can read it and I can move on to another note. Clear relationships between notes, and I feel like this doesn't get enough attention in Luhmann's method. He had a clear framework for sequencing of the notes, the framework for internal branching or expansion of thoughts, and I really want to thank Red Gregory, who's also linked below, for really breaking that down for me. Like watching your video made it click. And another thing which I want to hopefully do is retain some visualization of links. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know I'm a little bit precious about the graph and not having it be too cluttered. I feel like long term that might not actually be scalable. But anyways, another point here, related to above is a clear separation of inputs and outputs. Like I don't want to have this collector's fallacy of just like little bits that I've read from someone and sort of presenting it as my own. I really want to have processed it and chewed upon it. Related to this ability to resurface notes up here in the next video, I want to look at a simple categorization of notes. What did I want to avoid? I think this is also important. I wanted to avoid the use of numbers and letters to give these cards or these notes an address. And they're very clever. It's a very elegant solution, but with a digital program, I don't think we actually need that anymore because the address is stored elsewhere. Some things which I've seen in other people's approaches is super long linked text blocks. And I really wanted to avoid that. I did not like the long text blocks. I wanted to have short links. So that's a lot of introduction. What does my note actually look like? I'm going to once again look at Luhmann's great example and build from there. So this would be the structure of Luhmann's note. And I'm going to break it down piece by piece. First up, he had the note's title, and that was the introduction to the note, like the short text tidbit. So I've called this the tweet version of your note, just the simplified, bare bones version of what you're trying to say. And another benefit of that is it really makes you distill that down and actually think about what is the key message here. The second element were these different numbers and letters, as we saw. So that was the sequencing that we looked at and the branching. So in order to replace numbers and letters, I've used a different nomenclature. Sequencing, I will use CF, which is continue flow. Branching, I use DD, which is either drill down or diverging data, because it could be like I'm looking at this one thing or I'm expanding out into numerous different topics. It doesn't have to be one size fits all for you. Hopefully some cool ideas. And then R is for a related note. So there's not a good example in this note itself, but what that looks like is, linking to going through my notes. And if it's not something that's like directly related as in a branch or a continuation, maybe there's a concept that's related somewhere else. That's going to be helped by the categorization, which will come later. And then the final little bit of information, which I feel is very important, is linking to the source. So I'm not sure if Luhmann changed over time, because in Sonke Arends's book, he speaks about how he used to write the bibliographic reference on the back, so basically the source. And either way, I think it's good to be able to link to the source, but the way that I will do it in Logseq is by using a block reference in the source page. I create another little block reference, which allows me to link there without it creating a link in my graph. That's a little bit more detailed, but we can get into it now. Starting with a real example from my Zettelkasten, it's this note: strategy can either be deliberate or emergent. And this is looking at just that last point that we just looked at, how we decouple input versus output. So you'll see here that where I have my source, I've linked it with a block reference. And how I see that is that it's underlined as opposed to in square brackets. Using that block reference won't create a link in the graph, but I can still access that source very quickly. If I go there and I click there, it takes me to how will you measure your life, where I've created the source block here that will then allow me to reference it elsewhere without the direct link. So maybe a little bit too detailed. Hope that helps someone. Looking at my fake examples, let's first remember the story of the three little pigs, which had this, branching sequence down. And now I'm going to start with a note, and all my notes are pages. So that's like that atomicity of it. Like they can all be in one page and I can reference them and create those links on my graph. So once upon a time, there was an old sow and she sent out her piglets to seek their fortune. So continuation of the flow CF, the pigs decide to build a house. So all three pigs decide to build a house. They came across a man bundling straw. What is the continuation of the flow CF? The first little pig makes a poor decision. So that's the tweet version of my notes. So, the first little pig said to himself, I'm going to build the house now. And the continuation of the flow, whilst he goes about building his house, is that the saga continues for the other pigs. And this is the new preview function on the new Logseq version that you see there. But the drill down version of this, or getting into the story, is that the pig goes and builds a house. So if I go to the drill down, I can see, the man did give the pig the straw and he built the house and had a sleep. The continuation of the flow, again, is that our antagonist emerges. The drill down approach, if I wanted to get into it, is I could talk about the details of the house, but I actually haven't gone and built that. But the cool thing when I do this is that I can see here where this is linking in my little link references block here. So I can see that the pig builds a house is the drill down of this, the first little pig makes a poor decision. So I can click back up a level, so very easily navigable. And I can see that this one here, this first little pig makes a poor decision, is the continuation of the flow from this story, or from this part of the story where the pigs decide to build a house. And I go there, and I see that this part of the story is again the continuation of the flow of the story of the three little pigs. So that sort of sequencing really enables me to break it down piece by piece. So continuation of flow and drill down. Now this is version 1 of doing it, and this is like ensuring that the notes are in the most atomic version that they could be. But this story indicates that this might not be the most useful way. And I mean, the tweet version is cool, but there's another way that we can do this where we have a little bit more detail in each page. So let's go look at that version. I think this is also a really nice approach, which is enabled by this sort of drill down or continuation of flow. But now all the continuations of flow are in the same page. So I don't rely on that tweet example so much, or the tweet name of what is happening next. But once upon a time, there was a sow, the three little pigs decided to build a house. All of those are continuations of flow. But here, I've got this drill down element where I want to branch off. So the pig builds a house and meets his doom. And again, I've got all the elements that are part of the continuation of the flow in the same page, as opposed to like building out another node for each of them. So, I mean, it really is a case of personal preference here. You can decide on whichever one you want, and I'll probably use both of them because not all of my notes, I imagine, will have the substance to justify filling a page, but then I can, add those continuations of flow there nicely, and then where necessary, I can have these drill down branch elements. So it really is a case of personal preference, but I think for me, it's more the principle of sequencing and branching and being able to link those things back. So what's coming next in the system? So one thing that is clearly missing here for me is a categorization of notes, using keywords to group things together that will add value to them. And I've seen a couple of videos. The one which really looks nice is the maps of content approach, and my approach is very similar to that, and I'm working on a video for that, but that will probably be in a few weeks as I'm going away and taking a break from work. And then I would really like to get into a comparison of other systems and how they manifest in the graph. In my great resources listed below, and maybe if I just expand that, there are lots of great videos on Zettelkastens, and a big thanks to Robert Haysfield for his Rome tours with Joel Chand and Bo Hahn, who really helped me understand like the different ways of doing this. And as I mentioned, Red Gregory also did a great video which really helped me. So there's like super cool approaches, and I'd like to do a comparison of these systems and how they might manifest in your graphs. First, I want to understand the trade-offs a little bit better, because as I said, this system is still emerging for me, and I hope to learn as I do. And then special thanks to Red Gregory, as again broke down this branching so well, Robert Hasfield and his Rome tours, and then also Guy Etlin for introducing that analogy of just in time versus just in case. That was really, really useful, and I really appreciate it. I really hope that you found some value in this video, maybe got some ideas. As always, super appreciate the comments, and I try and answer them where I can. And yeah, looking forward to being back again in a few weeks with the next video. So see you then, hopefully.